I'm not sure how well this will show up, but anyway, got the timing belt ready to put it on. It's always a good idea to make sure it's the same. I seem to remember a situation where there was a certain car that there was one engine had a belt that was one tooth longer than another, and it caused a lot of havoc, at least in the ordering process. But these appear to be exactly the same manufacturer, everything. This one doesn't look bad, but that thing has got to be old. It was cheap too. Now for timing marks on these cars, show you what we have. The cam has an OT and an arrow, an OT. The countershaft sprocket is exactly the same part. It also has an OT on it. That is not what you want to line up with, because I mean, you won't hurt anything, you just probably won't run. This shaft drives the oil pump and the distributor. There is actually a dot down here on this sprocket. If you can see it, is right there, and that will line up with the pulley. It goes crank right here. There's a little, I'll show you this when we put it together. There's a little nub that locates that pulley, and you line up a little groove right there with the dot on the pulley, and that gets everything straight. Plus, this car has a distributor, so you line that up with the number 1 spark plug wire and you should be right. I actually found the book, so I have graphical representation of what we're talking about. So there's the cam. This is the what I was talking about. That's the crank pulley, and that's the countershaft pulley. And the older cars, this timing cover was all metal, and so it encapsulated everything, so it didn't have the back piece like this car does, and you would actually, there was a groove in the back, and you'd line that up with the head. So anyway, let's start putting this belt on. Everything should be lined up. Slide it over such as that. And of course it always jumps, but in general, that's what we'll do. And then we will take the new idler for the timing belt. And it's a good thing I ordered one. This is the old one. It looks fine, but if you listen to it, it doesn't sound too good. Plus there's a little bit of play in it. There's a new one. It's exactly the same. And it does not have that play. So actually, there's one more thing I want to show you. Let me get set up and we'll show how to check the timing mark, because the good timing mark for the crankshaft is on the flywheel. So the true timing mark on the crankshaft is here in the bell housing on the flywheel through that hole. Actually has a little plastic plug that pops into there. But you can't see the mark. That's for a special VW tool that'll read you can set the timing with. So you need a 27mm hex to get there. I remember making one when I was a mechanic out of I think this is a Mercedes-Benz transmission fit. I don't know. Anyway, I was able to make one out of this thing. And Need some 19mm nut screws on there. And you can get it out with that. I never put them in very tight. So you could get them out by hand, but this one is for some reason. And I did hear a horror story one time of a customer that added oil to the car, and they added oil through that. So you pretty much want to put that thing back in there. So let me get that out and I'll show you where the timing mark is. Okay, it's down through that hole. This is the flywheel. There's an arrow. I don't know if we can get the right angle to see it, but there's an arrow right in the middle of the hole. That lines up with the timing mark. That mark is for ignition timing, I'm pretty sure. This other mark, that should be our top dead center. But we can also line it up on the other end of the engine. We just have to put the cover back on and line up that groove in the front pulley. I have slipped the crank pulley back on. It has there's a little nub on that timing pulley that lines up with this hole, and that is what aligns it. Up here, if you can see it, there is an OT mark in a groove in the pulley, and that's what sets it. So we're good on that part. Okay, let's get this thing on here. Everything's lined up. Let me pull the crank pulley back off. We will set the timing in this car with the timing light afterwards, so if the pulley that drives the distributor gets off, it's not a biggie. Our teeth are lined up there. Keep it tight on that side. Roll it around, and then we will slip the tensioner pulley on. If I remember right, yeah, we'll go over the edge. You have to kind of get it started, get it down the groove, slide it all on at once. Okay, so there's that. There's supposed to be a wavy lock washer in here, which I'll have to look back at the footage. I don't remember if it was here or if I lost it, but anyway, I'm going to put a regular flat washer on here. And then there I have this special spanner to adjust that. Unfortunately, it's kind of a pain because of the angle, especially on these older cars. You have to kind of turn it up and then turn it so you can get your tool on. You're supposed to, actually, you know what we're going to do, it won't matter. This is a 15mm nut. We're going to go ahead and tighten that. And we will go and recheck our timing marks, and then I'll rotate it. Make sure they line back up. That one looks good. We can go ahead and, actually, let me go over here and look. Make sure the flywheel didn't turn. That looks pretty good. Slide the crank pulley back on. Check the cam mark. On these cars, it's so tight you can't see it. The A2 cars didn't have this side motor mount, so you had a little better access over here. To me, that looks good enough. As I said, we'll check the timing anyway. We can go ahead and stick the cover on and make sure that lines up. There's the groove and there's the mark. So we will go ahead and rotate the engine around. All right, the notch is lined up. Let me just turn this back to the little dot on the flywheel. That little gurgle you heard wasn't me, that was coolant in the tank. I've been adding coolant to make sure I didn't have any leaks. Everything looks good. We are not a tooth off, so we would be way off. It would not line up that well if we were a tooth off. Okay. Actually, that thing can go ahead and stay on there. So for the tension, you're supposed to be able to turn the belt 90 degrees between the longest point with light finger pressure or something. I'm going to tighten that up just a hair. This looks a little floppy to me. And there's a torque spec for that, which I think is pretty important. So let's see what that is. 33 foot-pounds. Okay, we're set for 33. With a 15 millimeter socket. Let's hold some pressure back on the tool. All right. So I'm not going to bore you too much. I'm going to put some of this back together, put the covers on, and we'll come back and put the accessories on. But I have those two hex bolts down there. I'll get that cover back on. But there's a bolt right here that seems to me, I'll have to look back at the footage, seems like that was not there. And it's like M8 on one end, and that holds the back cover on, and then M6 out here, and that nut goes on there and holds the front cover on. So I may have to make that and come back and put that back on, but we'll get this stuff back on. Okay, so I think we're ready to put the AC compressor back in. I figure how I contorted it. There was a bolt missing on one side, and it turns out, let's see, It was on the back side. But I did find it. It was located underneath it. So let's see if we can get this thing back in here. That's so the upper radiator hose I took loose and got it out of the way. I already put some coolant back in it to make sure it didn't leak, so apparently I'm pretty full at this point. All right. So it's kind of an interference fit on here. Alright, it moves some. So that's like a bushing in that bracket that makes itself fit. Pulls itself up tight. I don't really know why it would have moved, but it is what it is. Alright, now the front bolt. And then that's the back bolt from the rear that I found down underneath the bracket. Let's see if we can get these things started. I don't know what I was fighting with, and all of a sudden it decided to drop into place. So the missing bolt down here, if you can see that, over here, I apparently bought this special flex hex socket from Mr. Snap-on years ago, just for this job. Just to reach it. Alright, somewhere I've got a stubby 8mm I'll use. AC compressors in there. Got the alternator wrestled in. Let's see if we can get that bolt started. That was a piece of cake compared to the AC compressor. And that hose will go there. I'm going to plug the AC compressor in. This thing will go up here. Okay, we're ready to put the belts back on. I got all new ones. I had to go to 2 different stores to get them. Can you guess where I got them? Anyway, I think V-belts are becoming a thing of the past. They don't seem to stock as many. So let's go ahead, get you where you can see. Let's get these back on there. So first needs to go to the alternator belt. It's driven off the AC compressor. I'm going to try to get these on here. Since everything moves, you kind of have to, you can't really do them one at a time. So the AC compressor is too far down, so it's interfering with the water pump pulley, so I need to pull it back up. Since you really can't see this, I'll do that off camera. Okay, so the original water pump belt, AC belt, was back on there. I got what was the replacement at AutoZone, and it was just no way it was going to fit. The pulleys were like touching, it was so tight. So I went back and got the next longer length, and it was mispackaged, and it was a 15 series, it was a narrower one. So anyway, I'll deal with that at some other point. I did put a new one on the alternator, got that adjusted, tightened down. I did find, hiding underneath the wrench in the magnetic parts tray, the correct lock washer for the tensioner, so I have that on there. I have not made the bolt that goes in there. I'll probably make that at work this week, and we can stick that on whenever, because this cover is just held on. Just plastic. And then it'll act like a stud, the nut will go right there. So next, I will get you down below, and we will properly install the power steering pump. Hopefully not causing any water to come out of the engine this time. Let's try it from over here. I'll put the pivot bolt through first. We'll just do this by hand this time. Not sure why this thing doesn't want to line up. I know. There it is. Actually, I remember now. Or even move. There is a nut or a bolt all the way in the back behind the power steering right here. Behind the pump, up inside this cast bracket. But when I took it off, I just took the pump off. I didn't mess with loosening the belt. So now, we actually pivot. Why that doesn't line up, I'm not sure. That thing's actually bent a little bit. So it may loosen up. I think something's been in a bind before. So let's find our other new belt. The thing I like about these belts is they're cogged. They will actually conform around a smaller pulley, not make as much noise, and they should last longer. At least I know that's the case in industrial applications. I don't know Won't have to be any different here. Okay, so there's a little bit of play there. Never dealt with that before that I recall. Now this should drop in there. Pivot bolt up in here, there's a nut on it. Okay, here there's no, well, that's your adjuster, but I need to turn this thing about 100 times. I actually bought a 13mm ratchet wrench. Let me go get that. Oh, that's much easier than turning this thing 500 times with the regular wrench. All right. Probably good right there. That will not fit on that one. That's all right. And the one way up in here. All right, put that wheel back on, lower it, clean up everything, and we should be ready to start this up.